Hello everyone, this is me, Dusty Circuit here. And well, today I am actually in my... Just thought I'd make a video just to kind of showcase some of my redstone testing worlds. Well, largely because like the other day I was in a call on the restricted channel on Skade, and Taliesin actually was showcasing a single player survival world of theirs. I think they even had some of their friends join. That they say they had started it to play in 1.18 when it first came out, but they clearly have been playing a lot in that world, because I've seen a lot of builds in there. And well, that kind of got me, well, I don't have single player worlds or survival worlds, because I haven't really played single player survival really that much since I had joined the community that I had joined prior to Skade. So, but what I do have a lot of is these creative worlds where I design my redstone and my farms that I build on that I built on Skade or on Midgard. And prior to that, on that server I was on prior to Midgard as well, or prior to Skade. I have nowhere near as much stuff in this world as, I don't know, Mumbo Jumbo does in their testing world, but I still have a lot of stuff. Like pretty much everything that you see here, a lot of this stuff is just me just experimenting with different things, and it never really made its way into an actual build. But some of the stuff actually did. Like, I believe this was, I think this was the New Year's Eve countdown clock from, the old server. Of course, the one I built at the new server, I think, is different. Well, now that I think of this, I think this actually was the clock that I built for the new server, but well, for Skade, but of course the one on Skade, I ended up adding more things to it. And over here is some doors I was experimenting with. Well, I was experimenting with this design for a for a door using the honey blocks and slime blocks, like combining them together to make flying machines. And I was experimenting with making that different sizes. Oh, and this thing, I actually, so this contraption, I actually built for, I doubt I even got this on video, but, I would have built this for use in a, I believe it was for Jakey's, was Jakey was making some kind of they wanted to make a curtain for think it was a talent show or what that they were doing on the old server, and I think I would have built this. I think this is a design that I would have used in my base at one point. But then I made it bigger. Like I made it wider. So it's actually so Jakey could use it as a curtain. And I would have just put in black concrete powder. As this design basically, this is a sand door, so it can only be used with blocks that obey gravity. And I think this works. Well, the opening worked, but I guess the closing doesn't. Well, it does, but apparently you have to press it twice. That's really weird. Well, anyway. And of course, I also use this world to make Noteblock songs for the birthday team. Like, I don't know, I have no idea if these are the same song, but I would have like laid them out like this. And then I would and then because the birthday team wanted them put into a box to make it easier for them to be pasted in, I would have laid them out like that and then marked out like, so it's like I would be dividing them into sections, like this would be one section, this would be another, and then I would basically stack them like this. At least for the songs that were possible to do that with. And for at least for a few different Noteblock songs, I was able to actually compact them this way, but unfortunately this doesn't work for songs that use multiple layers of Notebblocks, because then you run into the issue of the Notebblocks physically being too far away from the player for them to be heard. And I guess largely for that reason, the birthday team has decided they will, instead of, that they will not, I guess the birthday team has decided that they will not be aiming to compact the songs and instead just have large Noteblock songs that you physically have to follow. But I guess it just is what it is. And I think this was just, I was experimenting with different ways to make map art colors. And because I think I would have designed a sign, for a map art sign for my shop. And this is more Noteblock songs. Oh, and this was me, this was kind of like a prototype of the mechanism for this particular type of tree farm that, well, it's another tree farm that's, so when I was submitting my nether tree farm, I ended up kind of coming up with two different designs. One was a design that I would have submitted, that was the design that actually was approved by the farm team, and it's the design that I am using today. But the other design was this design, and basically how this one works is these pistons like extend and retract in a way that this basically inches forward, and it basically pushes all the wood into this and into this section where these pistons will then extend and then push all the wood out and out, basically converting all the wood into a one block stream. I think I might be able to demonstrate this. Yeah, you can see it working there. And then when it's done, it just does the same sequence in reverse, but faster to get it back to the home position. And then after that, while it's doing that, the bone meal dispenser would be shut off so that another tree can't grow while it does that harvesting sequence. And then when that's done, it puts these back at the home position, and then it'll restart the bone meal dispenser. And how all that worked is, so because it would have to do that sequence faster, like slowly, while it's harvesting the wood, and then quickly in reverse. I figured that just doing it with repeaters would just be way too complicated. It would take up a lot of space. So what I ended up doing instead is using piston feed tape, or at least what the redstone community calls it that anyway. And it's basically a way to have it's basically the most compact way to have a read-only memory that like you can basically configure to have any sequence of blocks or any sequence of outputs that you want. And it's the most compact way, it's the most common way that that 7-segment display timers or counters are made, because you can just easily do the sequence required for a 7-segment display in these in this feed tape that moves around. And so and I'm using that to actually control these pistons. And it's just all this redstone here is just really just a wire that powers that powers the row of pistons when it's in this position, and then the pistons in this position totally separately. And the reason why I've done it this way so that each of these rows can be powered separately. So and then I just have like, so basically I just have the feed tape run. It'll just advance one time, and then this will run, and then this block conveyor will run once to get rid of the blocks, and then it'll move another step, and then it runs another time, and then that just rinse and repeats until this gets to the very end, and then it just runs the same sequence in reverse but faster. But unfortunately, the farm team, I guess, just saw this as me making a farm more complicated than it needs to be, and they didn't approve the design. And well, my reasoning for this design is to have a tree farm, and well, because you can't break, because with these nether trees, like the warped stems and the crimson stems, the leaf blocks, like unlike regular types of trees, the leaf blocks actually are block like that can't, like, they're not like a regular leaf block in the sense that you can't like have a leaf crusher that just breaks all the leaf blocks. They're like the leaves are actually a block that can be pushed. I guess what I'm meaning is the leaf blocks are a physical block. So my existing tree farm, basically it only harvests the trunk and whatever leaf blocks are in the way of the trunk. So you don't get that many of the warp blocks from that farm. And really my whole intention behind this farm is so that you can actually get more of the leaf blocks from the tree. But unfortunately for me, the farm team just saw it as me making a farm more complicated than it should be, and unfortunately I didn't get to build that farm. But yes, it is what it is. Anyway, this is my smelter that I have in my base. I believe this would have been the version that I would have built. I would have built this here, and then as soon as this one was functional, I think I would have taken this very build and then put that in a separate world to submit to the farm team. And I think this was this is my old design. Oh, I believe this was, I think Lucario wanted a smelter in their base, and I think I would have opted to give them my older design. And they would have changed the block palette to suit the theme of their base, and so that's what all this is. And this was that design that one of the older members from the old server, they were trying to make this into a community smelter, but that did not go well because, well, that server didn't handle redstone very well. It has nothing to do with the design itself, but the problem was the server they were trying to build it on. It just couldn't handle redstone. I forget what this was, but obviously it was some kind of item sorter. So kind of during that phase, just before, just kind of, and when I was in the old community just prior to Skate being founded, I was really in a hard situation with Farm Team where basically I was not allowed to have an item sorter in my base because that server, let's just say that server was really, like, that server was lagging literally just from community farms, and the farm team could not get accurate testing done, and thus they couldn't approve stuff for players like me because the server was already lagging because of the community farms that were in use. And so I went through this phase where I was just desperate to make an item sorter, but that could be approved for my base. Try my hardest to come up with some kind of design that could be somehow be approved. And thus I went through this phase where I was just literally throwing random ideas at the wall, hoping one would stick. Though a lot of these designs, and I ended up not even bother submitting just because, well, I've already tried that enough times, and my fear was, well, the more times I attempt to submit sorters, it's just gonna make the farm team more unhappy with me. And this over here these are some really old Noteblock songs. So the whole trend of building Noteblock songs as part of a birthday build, that was basically, I believe I was the one that started that trend. Literally I was this one day, well, mind you, this was a long time ago. This was the birthday team was very different than the way it is today. And this one day, I just literally, I believe Telly's build was the first build to ever have a Noteblock song. And I believe I literally put the idea forward, hey, maybe it would be cool if we could have a Noteblock song. And the birthday team was like, sure. And then I built the song, and then the birthday team was really happy with how it turned out. And though mind you, this was one of the simplest Noteblock songs ever. I think it was maybe only a few. I think it was maybe 20 Noteblocks. And I forget what the song even was. I think maybe, gosh, I forget what the song even was. And so maybe I might have the video of that build somewhere kicking around on my YouTube channel, but if I find that video, maybe I'll edit that in. But this was kind of from a time before the birthday team really had a process for making Noteblock songs, and it was literally down to just the players actually building them by hand. Either that or importing them into or using Minecraft Noteblock Studio to make songs. And so what are we, so it's, I guess this was before the team had a process to make Noteblock songs, and I was I was one of the ones tasked with making them. And so I actually made, so these songs actually work literally by, like, so it's like, there's basically like a redstone contraption that kind of plays a few sets of note blocks over again. And it's just like it would start playing one set, and then whenever the song calls for more different sounds to be played, it would start playing another set of note blocks. And some songs might play more than one set at a time. And like depending on the song, like one set might be playing, and then another set might be playing while that other set is still playing. And then one set might stop playing, largely depending on what the song calls for. I believe these actually still work. I think that one I would have made for, I think that one was for one of Obby's builds, if I remember. This one is basically just play like a set of note blocks over again throughout the entire song, but just like cover up parts of it to start off with, but then as the song progresses, uncover them so that they can play. And that's kind of what the majority of this wiring is. If memory serves, I think this would have been for a party for Jasden, like one of the old old admins from the old server. And I think I never remember for sure this one and also that one were featured on videos, and even this one I even got to showcase the wiring in the actual party. And I remember this. There was this one player, I forget who they were, but like this one player even made the comment of "Oh, that wiring's actually good." Then unlike Direwire, apparently that's supposed to be a reference to the way Direwolf 20 used to do Redstone. It's only really old Minecrafters will probably only remember. And if I remember, this one I think would have been for Lucario. Just looking for the button. There it is. And this one, basically, all these note blocks down here only are only played at the start of the song, and then the rest of the song are these orange note blocks, and then the very end, and then this line of note blocks plays at the very end. It's really it's really a different way to make note block songs than like the normal way they're made. And the only problem with it is that like you have to kind of know exactly how the song plays, and it's like you have to basically design an entire Redstone contraption specifically for the song, and in order to play it in the right order. Instead of just a universal cookie cutter way to make any song like you want, like out of note blocks. And this is the sorter that's used in my Guardian farm, and I believe I was submitting an upgrade to it, and that was mocking up here. And here I can actually showcase just how much redstone and stuff I was able to just cram in this one area, which is rather impressive. And it wasn't easy to do. I mean, it was not easy to make that. Like, I had to plan out and think about where to actually put things to actually make them fit in that space. But I pulled it off. I did it. And this is, this is my current version of the combination lock that I use at my base. And I really came up with this one to replace a design that was bigger, though mostly I wanted this design for the the ease of being able to change the combination. Like, so it's like it's basically literally stored in these lecterns, and all you have to do is change these lecterns. And this is the old design. It's just really quite an old design that's kind of been used like I think this design even predates 1.5. That's how old it is. And this over here would have been a contribution of mine to I think I would have. This would have been for one of Just Whisker's birthday builds, like JW. And I think I wanted to commemorate their work they've been doing on the farm team. So I just made this it's basically like a redstone, like I laid this out and like using the actual blocks. And then I built it like really large scale, like this. So I guess I didn't do this redstone torch here. But anyway, though it turns out that my decision to use netherite and these other valuable blocks in a birthday build was a bit of a mistake because, well, you're basically giving somebody free resources that they can just take and use for their own, like you're basically giving somebody resources, I mean, in a build form, but it's still resources that somebody can use. And I guess these are just more smelter designs. And this was this was the melon and pumpkin farm that I had on the old server. Well, this is the one that was after the really big one. Like, this was when when me and Void, when kind of Void took this over and decided to downsize it to, well, make it not kill the server, but still be a good melon farm in terms of rates. And initially, it was just going into just a basic item sorter. It just kind of looked like this, where it was just a bunch of chests with an item sorter on top. But then I wanted to improve the farm and add these shulker box loaders. And well, the reason they're so big is because they actually keep up with the rates of that farm. And it turns out that was kind of a bit of a mistake because so the farm team tested this. Well, mind you, this was a long time ago. This was a different time, so I am not by any means knocking the farm team, and mind you, this was this was a whole server ago, and it's not applicable to today, but so the farm team thought that I was just submitting this as I was just submitting this thing, like this farm was not part of it, and so they approved it on the basis that that this was the only thing I was submitting, but I guess it just fell through the cracks that I was going to include it as part of this farm, and that wasn't considered. And it turns out this combined with that was enough to cause a conditional lag problem for the server, where only under certain conditions the server experiences a TPS drop whenever this farm is running. But conditional lag is still lag, which the farm team doesn't want. Whether conditional or not, server lag is server lag. So that kind of led to this farm being basically shut down for a time until one of the old farm team members came up with the design that is in use today, which basically saved a farm that otherwise would be slated to be dismantled, and I would have to just submit a whole new farm. In which case, I would probably be forced to make an even smaller farm. And kind of for that reason, I was glad that farm was saved. Oh, and here I was experimenting with comparator-based calculation circuits to actually do math. Because I basically have been kind of hyper fixated on so ever since I've seen that video that I think Mango would have made of the SciCraft server, and I think also Mumbo Jumbo would have seen this as well, where basically they had this slime farm. It was a really crazy slime farm. Like, I think we probably had 20 or more slime chunks that were actually part of the farm, and it was using nether portals to basically send the slimes from every one of those slime farms into one area, and it was basically as one giant slime farm. And some of the more big-brained members of that server came up with the idea to basically make this fancy way to display the actual how many slime balls are actually in the storage, basically using redstone to actually do math. And come up with a result that's shown on a 7-segment display. And I basically just got hyper focused on trying to come up with some kind of way to do that in a way that the farm team would actually approve. That could actually be put into a build that the farm team could approve. And, well, I've been wanting to use comparator logic to do that because, well, the build on SciCraft actually used that, and, I looked at that build, and, like as something that, but if I understood how that build works, I could potentially downsize that into something that could have a chance at actually passing the farm team. Like if I were to downsize that build could have a shot at passing. But of course, there is no world download for that particular world, and really all I had to go by is just the videos, which of course don't show every intricacy of the redstone, and so it means we're largely just left to just largely guessing at how it works. And well, I've looked up on Google basically how that system works, and all I've really been able to find is there's this one Reddit thread where somebody actually made a similar kind of contraption, but they've done it differently, and instead they've just used different redstone just kind of cobbled together. Like I think they would have used comparators to do addition to kind of sum up all the different chests into one output, and then that would just be converted into binary and then handled using binary computational redstone until that's converted into the output for the displays, and then that would be converted back into analog redstone. This probably means absolutely nothing to most of my audience, but it's kind of, in a sense, it's how that system works. And well, I had become obsessed with trying to make that build work somehow, and my build on Asgard, that was the meter for my energy cores. That was my first attempt at that whole concept. I was like, well, let's at least attempt it on a server that doesn't have redstone rules. And even then, I was just gonna use it. I was gonna use the smallest, the simplest way to do it possible, at least in terms of redstone. And I ended up making a build that didn't kill the server, so that was a win for me. And I believe throughout this world, I actually have various different attempts at making that system. Like, I think this would have been one attempt, but I think I came to the conclusion this would have used way too much redstone. Because literally just updating this thing actually, like, severely causes me severe lag. Like, let's do this. Well, you're probably not gonna notice very much because I think back when I made this was before I got my CPU upgraded. Like, I think I was still running my Ryzen 5 2600 when I built this. So like the lag was a lot more noticeable, but whereas now I have a much beefier processor, and then that more or less isn't that noticeable. But I figured, well, if it's making my computer lag, it might make the server lag, so I decided not to build this. Oh, and this was a bulk storage system. Just basically, I put a bunch of shulker box loaders in one room. I basically built a whole auto sorter out of the shulker box loaders. And then JW basically made a design that's even more compact than this one, and I ended up not using this design. Oh, and over here, I was actually playing around with more concepts for that display. And I think when I actually built the thing on Asgard, I would have used designs similar to this. Like, I would have used this, and then I would have then eventually made this go to 2 separate displays, and then I would have made this basically do each calculation, like the same circuit do both calculations. Is kind of how I made that work. But I think the actual displays I made on Asgard, I would have used this exact design here. It's like this is all the binary, and then that's being converted into just one single redstone wire that represents all the numbers. And I think this actually would have been a candidate for my diamond counter that I submitted, but I think I ultimately went with a different design for that because I wanted this to be like if I were to put all my diamonds in this would fill it up halfway, and I wouldn't have much room for the future. And so I think my thought process there was I would eventually run out of room in that thing, and I'd be submitting an even bigger one to the farm team at some point. Oh, and this is the one that I actually ended up submitting for my diamond counter. And even though it has the most redstone in it of anything I've ever submitted, it oddly enough did pass. And I was preparing myself for this thing to fail immediately, but much to my surprise, it passed, and I built it. Oh, and all of these, this was me, I think these were my designs for that sign, like that map art sign that I was building for my shop. Like this one, like this particular one, well, I have my render distance up as high as it can go. Oh, wait, I think I can... Well, I was gonna say this is the highest I can set my render distance, but then again, I have NVIDIA. And I can turn this region keep distance up. And I can basically render this whole thing. I mean, it's very, very demanding to do this, but the fact that I can do this is still pretty cool. Like, basically what I'm doing is it's, instead of actually unloading chunks, it's literally keeping every single chunk I've loaded. It's just keeping every single chunk loaded now. So these particular signs, I think, are like 5 map arts tall. Or I think these might be 3 map arts tall. I don't think I remember, but and then these other ones over here are, I think, only 1 map art tall. And I think the story is I originally set out to build these giant ones, but then and then I even did all the resource gathering to make these giant map arts. But then but then I think it was either BB or Peachy strongly suggested I not build the really big one because it would cut these are lag concerns. And so I ultimately ended up building these smaller ones. And that happened after I gathered the resources to make the giant ones. So I ended up with a lot of extra resources that I didn't need, and I think I might even still have those resources right now in my storage room, and I just haven't gotten rid of them yet, or haven't found the use for them. Oh, and this is one of the ones that was generated using this is one of those fancy smancy 3D map arts, which is just insane. Like, imagine having to build these in survival. It's just crazy. And I think oddly enough, some people even build these in survival, which is I find is insane to even think about. It's anyway. Over here, I just have some, like this is the Noteblock song that's used in the, that's just used in the current, Skate New Year's Eve event area. Like, this is the one that plays the final countdown. Or the actual song, the final countdown, I think that was by Europe. And this, I think this was the actual area that I think I would have copied this from the actual server so I could actually get the Noteblock song into my world. Oh, and that's the entire area. I think this is my Guardian farm. I think I would have copied this so that I could actually put the Shadow Elder Guardian statue on top of it so I could see how it looks before I actually commit to building it. And then, oddly enough, it actually suits the theme of the farm pretty well. And I just think it's kind of hilarious that I just happen to be the discoverer of that head. And it just so happened to be the perfect roof ornament for my Guardian farm. Just kind of hilarious. And this particular farm over here, I think this was my attempt at designing a Guardian farm for MC Rocks. Because they wanted to build this Guardian farm that's inside of an oil rig. And well, this was my attempt to actually make a Guardian farm that would fit inside such a build. And it turned out this design actually worked for them. But I believe that even to this day, this is still an ongoing project for MC Rocks, and they submitted that build, like, probably half a year ago. Oh, and this is, I think, a cave spider farm that I would have made for someone on Midgard. And this over here is kind of a fancy anvil dispenser that it can hold even more anvils than the dispenser that's currently in use at my Guardian farm. And I've been kind of intending to submit this, but I just haven't gotten around to it, and I've been considering maybe downsizing it, maybe making it half as big, but I don't really understand how this design works. It's like I'd have to understand how this works before I can even think about downsizing it. And well, this is my current one. And there's apparently a wandering trader here. But anyway, this is kind of how my current one looks. Just very simple and kind of slapdash in comparison to that one over there. Oh, and these things. So it's like, so one day, Cubic Meter basically submitted this in this crazy, like, it's basically a copper, it's basically a machine to automate the oxidization of copper, like going from the, Like going from this block of copper to the fully oxidized state, like entirely automatically using redstone. Which of course is a thing I guess Mojang intended not to be automated, but of course the redstone community always finds a way to even automate things that Mojang doesn't intend to be automated. And so that original copper factory was just huge. Like, I think it literally went from, like, bedrock level to the build limits. Like it was just this huge tower. I think it was actually using powdered snow, like, as a way to, like, move the copper blocks so that, like, in a way that they're spaced out. Because I think it was originally thought that that was the more efficient way to do things, but then somebody else ended up coming up with this design here. That's way more compact, and so Cubic Meter ended up building this design, and then a version that's only this big. And then also another version that's like 4 of these put together. And that actually got me thinking, like, hey, maybe I might be able to submit a version of this that could actually have a chance, could have a snowball's chance at passing the farm team. And so this is, I was experimenting with these 2 different designs and was trying to make both of these functional, so it's like I could have, well, if this design fails for it's too big, I at least have this one to fall back to. And I think I got these working, but where this one I guess is so small, it only is able to basically turn the copper into the exposed state. And so it's like whatever if I want to go from this copper to the fully oxidized copper with this farm, I would have to run fresh copper through this farm several times to actually get the fully oxidized state, which would also mean running this through this blast chamber several times and using a lot of TNT in the process. And so kind of for that reason, I want this one to pass, because it would only, I think, require me to run it through maybe 2 or 3 different times as opposed to maybe 5 or 6 times with this design. It's been one of my things I've been intending to, that have been kind of on my, that have kind of been in the pipeline as far as farms that I'd like to build on Midgard, but I just haven't gotten around to submitting them because, well, I have way too many projects ongoing as it is, and so kind of why add more? And this build I would have featured in its own video, I believe. And this is just my attempt at making a, like, the ultimate beacon colorizer, like where it has an interface that you can enter in whatever color you want for whatever beacon you want. And you can store multiple different templates, basically. And really at the heart of this is just a giant redstone RAM array. And really the core of it is these stacks of latches. And then really the bulk of all this other redstone around it is just addressing circuitry for them. And then all this is just the control interface. And I know it's like I am aware that like it is possible to make this a lot smaller than it currently is, using newer redstone techniques, but I just wanted to make this. I just wanted to have a go at making something using at least redstone techniques that I understand. And I technically made something that's functional, even despite how comically big it is. Though maybe sometime in the future I might take a shot at actually making this whole same thing, but just maybe half the size or a third of the size. Just to see how much smaller I can make this thing. And this over here, I think to date is one of the biggest redstone builds I've ever made. And this is basically a giant pixel screen, and the fact that literally staring at this thing, my FPS drops to like the teens, just kind of says how big this thing, how insane this thing is. And I am not on, and I am not on a potato computer. Like, I mean, my computer was, like you saw in the same video, my computer was able to handle that display that I thought was going to be too laggy for Asgard. Well, this thing puts even my current computer, this makes even my current computer cry. Yeah. Well, I think that also has to do with the fact that I'm also running shaders, and at a high render distance at that. But kind of that's kind of proving to be a pretty bad combination from even my beast of a computer to render. And I think I would have actually went to the effort of actually using this whole interface here to actually key in each individual pixel in order to display Skate Gaming here. But I kind of ended up making the mistake of not building a queer function into this whole array, where the only way to actually queer it is to queer an entire screen. Like, you can't queer individual pixels. So, well, if I made a mistake, I would have had to go into the actual array and then actually manually reset one of these latches to actually queer any erroneous pixels that I would enter in. And really the rest of this is just an interface to enter the coordinates to actually address the screen. Like this would be the horizontal coordinate, this would be the vertical coordinates. And then this is really using the same kind of interface that I've used in my beacon color selector and in my enchanted book storage system. And then this is really most of this is just converting the output of this into actual binary, which like this converts the analog into binary, and oh, I forget though, this converts it into binary coded decimal, and then this converts it into just straight up binary, which goes to actually address the screen. And this one over here selects which memory bank you're actually editing, and there's only, I think there's only 8 memory banks in this, so that's why it's only a single digit display here. At some point I might actually want to add the ability to individually clear pixels, but that's going to require me to redo this entire monstrosity back here. I would have to add that functionality into, but at least it's easy enough to make happen with some time in World Edit. This over here, this is actually a calculator that I made. And I believe that and that screen over there, I think, even deserve their own videos. But so a while ago I set out to build a 4-function Redstone calculator, but instead of just going for like the simplest one, like a 4-bit one that can only handle 4-bit numbers, I set out to build one that can handle 16-bit numbers, because I thought my thought was, well, I want to make a calculator that's actually more usable, that you could actually use to do math with. But I made the mistake of going into it from the deep end, like actually doing, trying to make the giant one before the small one. And well, I ended up not finishing that project, but I ended up finally doing that one here, and though the reason it's so big is I wanted to do it using the older I wanted to build this using older redstone circuits, because I think I would have done this, I think, back in 2015 or 2014, and I think at that time I only understood this older way of doing computational redstone. And for that reason I wanted to build this using that like the way that I would have learned how to build this back in those days. Though the one exception I had to make was the circuit that's needed for the division side of the calculator, that it has to convert the actual output into a number that the divider could actually do. And I ended up having to use a circuit from somebody else's build, but that's really the only exception to that. Like, other than that, this is all circuits that, I didn't design these, but these are ones that the Redstone community has used, at least until the advent of carry cancel adders. Which is just, of course, is a topic only the hardcore Redstoners know about, but it's basically a more compact way of doing adders, which basically revolutionized the way Redstone computers and just computational circuits in general are built in Minecraft. But I wanted to build this without using those, so that's why this thing is so big. I have to make my own video about this, but I'm just showing it off in this video, or I'm kind of taking you on a tour of my whole world. Well, I feel like that's basically all I have to show here. Oh, over here, I was actually testing different ways of doing ice highways, like for use in my base and like my nether base and stuff. And because the way I usually do, this is the way I used to do them, which is a 3-block wide road, originally using packed ice, but then I switched over to blue ice because blue ice is faster, but blue ice is also a lot more expensive. Like, it's like you have to craft blue ice from packed ice, and one block of blue ice takes 9 blocks of packed ice. And it's not hard to imagine just how expensive, like if I were to be building all my ice highways like this, it's hard to imagine how expensive that would be. No, not hard to imagine. So I ended up just going to how I'm doing them today. It's just 1 block wide like this. Like basically 1 block wide, and then stairs on either side, and then glass panes on the sides like that. And so basically, like, a boat can still fit on this and still mostly get the whole effect, even if you're off to the side. And so it kind of lets you get away with using less blue ice. But then I experimented with like spacing it out, and then like mixing in alternating between blue ice and packed ice. But I think I ultimately ended up going for just solid blue ice 1 blocks wide, because I think that was still technically faster. But anyway, I think that's about it for this particular world, but I do have one other world to show. Well, I do have one other world to show, and that is this one. And this is an even older world, I think. I might not be remembering this correctly, but I think this might have. They think this was a world that was originally from. I think it originally would have been from Mod Killer's creative server. And but I think but then at one point Mod Killer, I think, either stopped hosting it or started using it for something else, and I ended up just like, hey, can you just give me my world back? And then he just gave me the file, and that's what. Then I think that's where this came from. But this is where my underwater base was born. This is where I would have originally designed the base. And like, I would have designed it in this very world, and then copied it, and then I would have copied it from there. Like this over here, this was the original. This is how the storage room for my Guardian farm originally was when I first built it. It's just quite a bit different than how it is today. And largely the reason I moved away from that design was to reduce the number of hoppers I'm using in my base, because it was just... That old server owner basically drilled into my head that hoppers are just the most horrible thing for servers. And it's like the least of them you can use in a build, the better. And so I just went and I was just like, well, I'm just going to reduce the number of hoppers I'll use. And so that's kind of largely why I moved away from that design, and it's largely the reason why a lot of other designs, why a lot of other redstone in my base got replaced, was largely out of a drive to cut down on hopper usage. Because my brain at that time thought, well, less hoppers, less lag, and more better. Oh, and this is how my my storage room, like, this is like how I originally planned my storage room to look. Like, I was gonna have a sorter kind of like this, which currently appears to be kind of glitched out. But anyway, like, this was the sorter that I originally was gonna plan to put in this room. But then... But then the server lagged, and oh no, I guess I can't have the sorter anymore. But I guess the layout of this room ended up staying the same. And then this ended up being used for... Like, I would have had a smaller sorter that only took up the central section. And then my auto smelter, like, kind of in that area there. But then I ended up putting 1,000 hoppers in one area, and oh no, I guess I gotta fix that problem now. And so that's what ended up leading me to make my separate item sorter and auto smelter rooms. Just kind of how that's just and that layout is still true of my base today. And as you can see, here's where I originally would have planned that out, or at least how it was back on the old server. And these were just for all my various designs for my auto smelter. And this, I was originally testing the blast chamber that I was going to use for my first ever blast chamber concrete maker. Like, I think this was that design that was made by El Mango that ended up being problematic. I could believe even this particular one's broken. And then I eventually moved on to cubic meters design, which actually proved to be a lot more reliable. Well, this is kind of the like the OG design of my smelter before I ended up moving on to the one that uses shulker box loading. And this was one of my kelp farm designs, back when I was actually using kelp as a fuel for auto smelters. And Ironically enough, the reason I moved away from this was because I have to be, I have to manually craft the kelp into blocks, and B, this uses a lot of bone meal. It's like I have to constantly be refilling these chests with bone meal. And because, well, at that time, we didn't have any sort of auto crafting in Minecraft, I was forced to do that manually, but the irony is that we actually are getting auto crafting added into Minecraft now, which actually which oddly enough could make this kelp maker actually more feasible as a fully automated source of furnace fuel. Which is rather ironic, but I guess that's just kind of how things are playing out in Minecraft right now. And this is kind of one of the older iterations of my auto smelter, and I think this is the first time I actually made this building. And well, the reason behind these two stacks was, as I guess my thought process was, well, if this is an auto smelting room, I want to add smokestacks to it, and that's just kind of largely what I did there. Oh, and this was when I had become enamored with this particular design that was attempting to be like automated and using shulker boxes, and the reason it's looks so complicated is it was trying to use fewer hoppers. And apparently, like, it being designed this way was supposed to reduce lag, or I forget even what the reasoning behind this was, but I got led to believe that this was a superior design, but I ended up building this. Well, I ended up just. This was back in a time when I didn't trust the farm team, and well, I ended up trying to. I actually attempted to build this instead of the design that was approved, and I guess in a way I'm kind of glad it ended up the way it did, because well, if it didn't cause lag, I would have been allowed to have a non-approved smelter for a good number of months, and then at some point the farm team would find out, and then I would be forced to lose that. I would be forced to give up my auto smelter. So in a way, I guess I'm kind of happy that this one failed as quickly as it did. So it at least tell me to go back to the one that was approved. Anyway. Oh, this here was, this was my old shop. Like, kind of how I was able, I was figuring out how to make the redstone for the firework dispenser fit in the plots. And this is kind of what I came up with there. And this was my original design for that room I made with the death counters and the ceiling that lights up. And what's over this one over here is rather has a bit of a story behind it. So at basically around the time that the auto sorter in Atlantis, or that area on the old server, around the time that got built, I was still enamored with the idea of building my own auto sorter in my own base. Because, well, that auto sorter was technically that was not my auto sorter. That was for that sorter technically belonged to the players that lived at Atlantis. And, well, anybody who's to use that sorter is basically forced to share with everybody else. And so I was basically hyper-fixated on trying to come up with an auto sorter design that I could use in my own base. And so originally, I believe this would have been the original auto sorter design. I think this would have been the first design that I would have considered. And it's quite big. And it already has, like, I think more than too many hoppers to build on especially the old Big Kids server. That was already, like, the sorter that was in Atlantis was already big enough to cause lag issues, and I think this sorter was supposed to be twice the size. Like, I think just one of these areas here was already, I think, the size of the sorter that was in Atlantis, and this is, like, has two of them. But and then this storage room already has, like, this can already hold, I think, 500 items worth. But then I had become enamored with, well, so Etho came up with, so Etho just made the what he called the Nexus in his single player world, which is this auto sorter that also has an item calling ability. Like, you could just enter a number into into a panel, and it'll basically, it's like you can order your items and they'll get delivered to you, as opposed to you having to go through the storage room and picking them up yourself. Well, this was my attempt at that whole idea, and so I found this design for that kind of an auto sorter. I think that was on an article online, and it literally is like a step-by-step process on how to actually build out this particular design. And I think this design would have been originally intended to be used with shulker boxes, but because this was back in the time before shulker farms were a thing, and you actually had to raid end cities to get shulker boxes. Which meant that unless you knew how to duplicate items, shulker boxes were quite a rare item. And so I would have, I think, ended up trying to use this design to store items instead, like individual items. And I was literally trying to make this thing work, like as if I was going to build this sorter in my actual base on that server. And it's, let's just say I am really happy I didn't end up going through with this plan. Because this, it's not hard to imagine. I mean, even giving how that sorter that was smaller than this one failed. Like, it wouldn't have been hard to imagine that how this one would have failed as well. I mean, maybe if I would have been very lucky, I might have been able to, like, had I have built this sorter in the silent era, like during the time before, Blue and the other players returned, and before Atlantis was founded. Like, I might have been able to build a sorter like this in the time when the server was, when the server had very low, player count. And I was like, for a time, I would be the only player on the server. Like, maybe a sorter of this magnitude would have worked then. But then right as another player would join, the server would probably would just crap the bed. And basically, just either TPS would just tank or the server would crash. Like whenever my sorter would be loaded, whenever somebody else would join, the server would go poof. And then I would be basically forced to either abandon my base or tear down my sorter. I mean, I was already in that situation, with that other sorter that I've shown, this one over here, but that problem would only have been worse had I had gone with this design or even that design. So, I mean, at this point, I'm at least happy that I have an auto sorter in my base. Period. But now I'm left with all these sorter designs that are way too big that I can't build on Midgard. That maybe when the time comes I finally get into playing on single player, I might eventually build those on a single player world now that I have a beast of a computer. But anyway, this over here was, so if any of you have seen my ice farm, this was kind of a previous attempt to actually build a bigger ice farm using two of these put together. But of course, this was back in the time when the farm team was, well, a lot more strict about redstone, and because of the state of that server. And well, it's not hard to imagine why I didn't bother submitting this thing. And this was an attempt at basically making a bunch of farms in one small area. I think this was originally for a base that Colgutton ended up planning out, but it's like, so it's like Lucario had this, like Lucario would go through these phases where he'd plan out a big base, but then his ADHD gets to him, and then he ends up not building that base. And yeah. And that's my giant wither skeleton farm that, well, ended up being one of my biggest blunders ever on the old community, but I still have it in this world. Oh, and over here, so me and Void for a hot minute had this crazy idea that we were just gonna build this huge melon and pumpkin farm that was just gonna be a secret because, well, we had this mindset that, well, if a farm is kept secret on that old server, drama is never gonna happen. So we thought that, well, we're just gonna capitalize on that and then build a huge secret farm. But then we had the thought of, well, maybe we should run that idea by farm team and staff, and they said, well, don't do that. That's just going to be, well, we're just going to have a problem that's waiting to happen. And so this particular farm never got built, but I still built it in my world anyway, just to see how crazy I could make a farm like this. Like, I think I think all those, what you saw in those chests, I think this would have been what this farm produces. I frankly forgot, frankly don't remember the rates of this farm, but it is crazy. Like, probably several tens of thousands of items per hour or something like that. And these were, well, also part of my hyperfixations on item sorters, and after I've seen what Etho called the pixel, or I think it was his shulker-based item sorter, like it was actually like an item search engine, where you have all these randoms. It's like you can have shulkers of random items, but why does that matter as long as you have an automated search engine where you can literally take an item and then drop it into a hopper, and then the machine will return all shulkers with that item in it. And I was pursuing that as actually a way to have an auto sorter on the Little Kids server, which had the 50 hopper limit in place. And in my mind, that could be a way to have an item sorter on that server. But I guess I ended up not going through with that. Yeah, but anyway, this video is really getting long. And, so this is this is the end. This is my end base from the old server. I think I would have just pasted it here for some reason. But anyway, I think I've shown off all I really have to showcase in both of these worlds, so... Oh, I guess I could show this one. This is the... This was the old, this was the portal room and the spawn on the old server that I ended up designing. But anyway, I guess I'll conclude this tour here, because this video is really getting long. But anyway, this has been me, Dusty Circuit, here with kind of this impromptu tour of my creative worlds. And if you liked what you saw, or do leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you want to see my next videos, be sure to hit the bell for notifications. And peace out. Bye.